The CGA Tour, a podcast unlike any other. Now your host, Calvin Alexander.
Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. As always here, I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander. And before I bring on my guest tonight, I just recorded with Nick Tozier. And it was a great podcast. It's all about the OKC Thunder, hence the jersey here, and of course the flag in the background. But before I get to all that, Russell Westbrook played against the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight. And I mean Russell Westbrook played against the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight because it seemed like he was the only one who was really trying out there in the game to maybe not get his feelings hurt. I'm still confused about why Patrick Beverley and Karl-Anthony Towns feel they have the right ability to make fun of a guy who's won an MVP and averaged triple-double for 4 seasons straight, which may be the detriment of Westbrook doing that, but regardless here, let me know when you win something. Like playoff games, Karl-Anthony Towns, I'm sorry about everything that happened through COVID. You're a great story. You won the NBA three-point shootout, but, I mean, you can't clown a guy like that. You're taking the one chance you'll have, basically, to clown him. Maybe you'll get to clown him for another 3 or 4 seasons because he'll keep his career going on and he'll keep going down the same trajectory. But you know what? Where have you been? And Patrick Beverley, I'm sorry, last time Westbrook played against you, I think they won. And maybe not because I don't have the most recent topic at hand here, but it's honestly because I don't think of you on one team. Westbrook's changed teams less than you have, and he's changed teams the last 4 years in a row. So, I don't know. With all that being said here, there are 3 main points I want to get to before I get to Nick. First is the Lakers as a whole with Westbrook, why that deal didn't work out, or hasn't worked out so far. 2, what were our expectations with the Lakers? And 3, LeBron James' handling of everything from the start to looks like close to the end of this season. So, first, the main problem with the Lakers. I'm not sure if everyone remembers here, but back on July 30th, the Twitter sphere went crazy because Westbrook was announced as joining the Los Angeles Lakers. And just to kind of recap here a little bit, all right? The takes went a little something close to Max Kellerman saying this could be a better triple threat here than than Kyrie, KD, and James Harden. That's right. Yeah, Max Kellerman, July 30th, said, yep, I think this could be better than all 3 of those guys combined, which those 3 guys combined would have been great if we had seen more than 16 games out of them together. But regardless here, Stephen A. Smith goes on to say, I think Westbrook and Anthony Davis and LeBron James could all make it to the finals. I was already going to say finals without Westbrook. Now I'm going to say finals for sure with him. And it goes on and on and on. But all of the positive reaction, the positive news about Westbrook being traded to the Lakers. This was a surefire deal. Oh, this is a winning deal. It's going to be the best ever. It just hasn't been. I don't think I have to say why. I don't think I have to keep going on too much longer here with this, but it has not been the greatest deal ever. The other part of this is that we're not talking about Anthony Davis enough. I don't know how else to say it a little bit better. We're just not talking about him as a whole, as a player here. Because basically, at the end of the day, Anthony Davis has played less than half of the games in the season so far. And if we're not talking more about him and the amount of games he's missed and why that's Westbrook and LeBron James haven't been able to figure it out on their own, I don't know what we're doing. Because that's the main deal out of all this. Is that when Anthony Davis basically made the deal with Clutch, and then they made the deal with LeBron, and then they made the deal with the Lakers, and the Lakers traded basically all of their pieces to the New Orleans Pelicans to get Anthony Davis, that put into motion what we have today. It put into motion a trade that included a championship, which I know is during COVID, but it's put in motion every single thing we have today. LeBron James goes to a new team. They trade one player for a bunch of other stuff that may be better or maybe worse, and it doesn't work out all in the end when LeBron's about to leave. He's able to leave at any moment. That's what players can do. They don't have to stay with the same team for their whole entire career. I get it, but Anthony Davis trade here that sent Lonzo and it sent Brandon Ingram, 2 guys who I think we playing pretty darn great as a duo right now with LeBron James on this roster, instead of Anthony Davis, who has missed more than half of the games that have been played so far. Lakers have 24 games left in their season, and Anthony Davis has played in 37 out of 58 games so far. So, a little more than half, but he's not coming back anytime soon. And I don't think he's going to come back for any of the last 12 games of the season. Maybe he does to show some spite or happiness or excitement because the Lakers have an uptick towards the last couple games, or they make the play-in tournament and he comes back for that game or a couple games before to kind of get tuned up. But 24 games isn't a ton left. And I could not keep going into as much as I want to, but when you've played less than half the season, I don't I think that is a huge factor. This is the first season since Anthony Davis' second season in the league that he has not been an All-Star because he's played in 37 out of 68 games right now. I don't know where to stand on it. I don't know how to feel about it. I just don't think Anthony Davis is no longer a top 25 player in the NBA. His health and inability to stay healthy in his career so far with the Lakers has been the detriment of the team. LeBron James and Anthony Davis last season missed a total of 63 games combined. You know that for sure. Anthony Davis last year played in 36 games. Year before then, he plays in 62 out of, at that point, 82 games. And his last year at the Pelicans, he plays in 56 out of 82 games. I mean, since joining the Lakers roster, Anthony Davis has had a really, really, really good season. And then a season where he wasn't really that great. His points dipped, everything dipped, but so did his games. He only played in 36 games out of 72. Okay, that makes sense. But this year he'll make a leap back. This year he'll come back. I don't know how we're not talking more about Anthony Davis being the issue with the Lakers. Russell Westbrook is an amazing player, but I don't know what anyone thought they were seeing in DC or Houston. But it definitely wasn't Russell Westbrook of 2017. It wasn't. By that point, he definitely changed as a player. Definitely decided to try to take over games for the Wizards, which Wizards were all for. But the Wizards' hopes are making the playoffs. Lakers' hopes are winning the whole dang thing, especially when you have LeBron. I could talk more about the LeBron James deal here for point number 2, but I really just want to show the Instagram post that LeBron James had whenever Westbrook ended up meeting with LeBron at his house with Anthony Davis, saying everyone would take shared roles if they needed to, everything would all work out, be perfect. I mean, he has a whole entire Instagram post of Brody, King, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook all together. How awesome would that be? And I do think it would be pretty darn awesome, to be honest. I don't think it'd be bad at all. We haven't seen Anthony Davis on the court. The guy was supposed to be the guy. Basically, you have LeBron James, who's past his prime. At this point, his prime cannot go on for his entire career. Maybe it can. He's an incredible player, but he's got to be towards the end of his prime at least. Russell Westbrook is not in his prime anymore. I don't think I'm breaking news with that one. This is supposed to be Anthony Davis. I mean, I keep coming back to it here. We're 28 years old, man. Not even 30. It's supposed to be you. But I digress. All right. I think anyone at all before the season starts says, would you take an Anthony Davis trade for Karl-Anthony Towns straight up? And everyone's saying one thing for sure. Yeah, I'll take Anthony Davis 10 times out of 10, 11 out of 10 if you'll let me. And now it's maybe 50-50. That's how much this whole thing is flipped with Cat and Anthony Davis. So, there you go with that. LeBron James, he was so incredibly happy to get Westbrook on the roster, tweeting out stuff, sharing everything, saying Lakers are going to win it all, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not like he's backed away from supporting his guy in Westbrook. He hasn't said anything really negative about him that I've seen, but he hasn't said anything positive either, especially as recently. And that's not necessarily his duty as a player, but I think Westbrook's just trying to play out all the demons possible. I mean, he just looks like he's trying 9,000 times harder than everyone else on the court. And because of it, he just doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, it just looks like a guy who has just so much energy, it's just not working out anymore. He's so in his head every single game. He's just trying to be there, be everywhere all at once, but he can't. And then when it comes to his defense, man, I don't know what people thought they were getting with his defense, but he hasn't been playing great defense. Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, or Defensive Second Team Player when he was at UCLA. Since then, we haven't talked about Westbrook's defense really, not to my imagination at all here. I mean, I know Westbrook's a decent defender or has been in the past, and this year it's been really, really rough. But in Oklahoma City, the entire time he had Cephalosha, defensive stopper, or Andre Iguodala. Excuse me, not Andre Iguodala. The Cephalosha or Andre Roberson. Excuse me, right next to him at the shooting guard position, be able to play the best, defense possible than the other guys. Now the guys running with Russell Westbrook on defense are Austin Reeves. Come on, I mean, Reeves is a decent player. I'm not going to just hate OU every single day of the week, but he's not a defensive stopper guy that Westbrook's used to playing with. And 3 here, I kind of forgot what my last point was, but the last thing I really do want to say about this is that LeBron James is stat stuffing right now. That's what we're seeing. And the end of this season, we are seeing LeBron try to get to 40,000 points for his career. That's an awesome achievement. That is incredible. But man, is it just not necessary? I think the Lakers and I think LeBron James and Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis will make it to the play-in tournament. I think they'll maybe win one game, lose the second one. They won't be out of they'll be out of the playoffs. And that'll be it for the Lakers. That'll be it for Westbrook. And I'll be really, really annoyed as a Oklahoma City Thunder fan and a Westbrook supporter that he didn't get a chance to play with a healthy Anthony Davis, because this guy was in MVP runnings not too long ago. He almost single-handedly, it seemed, beat a Portland Trailblazers duo of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, which Damian Lillard don't go far. I got some news for you too. But it's just ridiculous how much his career has gone downhill so quickly, when I gotta say, Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook are in the same situation right now. I don't think either team would touch him with a 10-foot pole for the amount they're going to get paid over the next years with their injury history. Anthony Davis is surely a great, great player anyone would take. But, man, his injury history, he may not play combined full season over the past 2 years. Past 2 seasons. Crazy. Anyways, with all that being said here, we'll go ahead and hop to the Nick Tozier interview with Nick's Oklahoma City's Thunder's 5-point plan for success here. All right. Well, I also have, of course, on the podcast here tonight, Nick Tozier. I think I said that last name correctly, although it's my first time trying. But Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining. And we connected a couple different times in the past. I remember with like Crossover Sports Network, and then there was the G League site as well, too, right? So it's been fun talking some hoops with you in the past here. Glad to have you back on for sure. But gotta talk about our favorite team overall, especially our favorite team this year, which is the 20-win Oklahoma City Thunder. Not sure I'd be saying that 3 or 4 years ago, right?
If 20 wins is where we're setting the bar at, then I guess we're killing it.
Yeah, I think the Vegas projections, I had to look it up just to make sure I was right. Going into the season, we're 25.5 wins. It was like, all right, will the Thunder win or lose, 25, and a half games or more. And I gotta say, I don't see it happening, but it seems like the Thunder will be right at pace to basically hit that mark, like hit 25 wins or hit 26 wins. There'll be anyone who bet the Thunder's win-loss going into the season, they'll still be hanging on to their butt at the end of the season here, basically, trying to see what works out. But with all that being said, I've had a chance to go see a couple of different Thunder games in person this year. Would definitely suggest doing that if you're in Oklahoma City, of course. I think you're not, but Thunder games are always a lot of fun to go out to. So hopefully supporting all my ticket selling friends there in Oklahoma City with the Thunder. And Nick, I'm curious here. I know you've been following the NBA, the G League, a bunch of other just developing players for a long time now. I mean, we connected originally when I was working for the Oklahoma City Blue, but not really working for them, but kind of just doing the website articles and stuff like that. So How have you liked this watching the Thunder team so far? Granted, especially over the past like 10 or 12 games where Lou Dort's been out and they've added some of the G League guys to the roster.
I will be completely honest with you. It's been painful.
Yeah.
Rebuilding is never fun, and I know that we have the promise of all of these draft picks that are coming and how we're going to change and we'll be competing. But yeah, we're taking our lumps right now, and it's never easy as a fan to go ahead and try to learn the names of a bunch of guys who probably won't be good enough to play for us in a couple years. Try to learn the names of the guys that we hope we get in the draft, but it, yeah, I don't know. I've not been as excited about this team over the past 3-4 seasons.
Yeah, I think it's been harder to follow. And I do think that the Thunder attendance for a lot of games could be more. So clearly the fans are feeling the same way. And it's not just as packed as it used to be going to Chesapeake Arena, now Paycom Center. But when I look up and down the Thunder roster, I mean, I saw a tweet where it was, I believe, 3 years ago, the Thunder starting roster was, I mean, it was like Chris Paul, it was, Grant Shea, but it was Schroeder and a bunch of other guys that we just know as like household names. And now to go through the list and go, okay, our best two players are under 25. Shea, of course, is not on a rookie deal anymore, and he signed a max extension, but I mean, he's 23. Josh Giddey's 19, and the rest of the team is basically just a bunch of super young dudes, except for, I mean, Mike Muscala, who seems to be the father of the team, / Derek Favors at this point, who are the only guys who are 30 or older on the team, and they're the oldest guys. So it's weird watching Oklahoma State players on the team like Lindy Waters, but it's kind of cool at the same point because we get to see some G League guys. But I got to agree. Besides that, it's hard for me to truly go, okay, is Trey Mann part of this rebuild, or is he one of the guys that we maybe like work together to be in a package on a draft night deal, they'll make in the future? And that's what more or less I want to talk with you about here going forward. It's just the future for the Thunder. So I'll let you take it away a little bit, but what do you think the Thunder do here with Josh Giddey and with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Do you think they end up keeping both of them long term, try to build around them, or trade one of them if something works out? What are your thoughts?
Sure. Let me go ahead and take it a step back real quick because you hit a perfect. You lead me right into some thoughts that I had about Trey Mann. So I'm going to go ahead and start there. But yeah, I think we definitely have some pieces in the backcourt with SGA, Giddey, Dort, Mann. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty good starting backcourt, and I don't feel like that's the worst depth to have off of the bench either. Now, I know we play a lot of three-guard offense. I don't know if that's because our guards are so good or we just have absolutely nothing in the front court, but I do really like those four guys, and I do feel like, assuming that we bring Dort back for another couple of years, I do feel like that's a pretty good way to start building this club up. Now, I do kind of hope that we'll add some front court depth better than Derek Favors, but, we won't know how that goes until we see how the draft order kind of plays out and whether we're picking, top three versus, something that happened with Giddey where we kind of fall back into, 5, 6, 7 range. So.
Yeah, that was one of those things where I think teams are now looking, wow, if we redrafted just last year's, Josh Giddey might have moved up a spot or two. I still don't think he, of course, moves into the top 3 or anything crazy like that. But instead of it, oh my gosh, how did we not take Davion Mitchell? Or, oh my gosh, how in the world did we not try to take Jonathan Kuminga? It's, okay, thank goodness we took Josh Giddey, where we did. And you've got LeBron James shouting out Sam Presti's eye for talent, which, I don't know. Do you think there's any truth at all into LeBron James really coming to play in Oklahoma City if Bronny James is drafted by the Thunder? Do you think Bron would follow through on that promise?
In one word, no.
Yeah.
I just can't see it happening. I get that, that would be a great motivating factor for him, but do I really think that he's going to go to any NBA market to play with his son? No. I think he'll leverage it, and who knows, maybe he'll get the Lakers to draft his son 20 spots higher than he's supposed to go in the draft just to make LeBron happy.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I could also see this being an audio clip that we're just told about in like 6 years from now. And it's like, LeBron, didn't you say this? And he goes, I don't even remember what I said yesterday. Right, and just rolling over on it completely and just going, I'm sure, I mean, whatever I said then, who would want to play with their son, right? And just goes into the sentimental aspect of it. Because at this point, LeBron James is a great player, and the Thunder do have an insane amount of draft picks. So this question will come up, especially when LeBron shouts out Sam Presti. But at the same point, Brian James may not be the third best player on his own high school team at Sierra Canyon. I doubt there's really any strong possibility that the Thunder and an Oklahoma City organization would go, you know what? One guy we just would love to absolutely have here in Oklahoma City, no matter what, LeBron James. Like, he's not from Oklahoma. He doesn't have necessarily any ties. And also, 5 years from now, if we just fast forward, I mean, the Thunder hopefully have a team that is filled out kind of like you were talking about with Josh Giddey, Shai Gilgeous, Lou Dort, maybe a Trey Mann coming off the bench, maybe a Mike Muscala still on the books necessarily, but, really coming in as like I don't know, just backup of a power forward at that point. Because, it's when Mike Muscala will be 35. So, I think there's some realistic stuff, but our front court cannot be Darius Baisley, Derek Favors, and Ken Williams, I don't think. I think, JRE, Jeremiah Robinson is a good player, but this team, I mean, a lot of guys have a ton of time to develop, of course, because it just is how it is. I still cannot believe the Thunder are paying Kyle Singler, by the way, just as I look through the salary roster here. But all that being said, I do agree. I think that there are moves to be made. And I'm curious to see here who ends up staying on the roster.
I can tell you who is getting paid on the roster right now is still Kemba Walker.
Yeah, that was a mutual agreement to part ways when he basically just never even played a game for the Thunder. And he's getting paid $26 million this year, $27 million next year. And then I look at like Derek Favors, who, you know what? Yeah, it's not a great time to be a Thunder fan and see all these cap hits take place. But, Isaiah Roby's giving it to to Jokic the other night and showing out the MVP. So take that when we can against the Nuggets. And, of course, love watching that game. Granted, I do wish it happened at home because I think it'd be a lot more fun that way. But, you know what? Then again, Minnesota Timberwolves are going to just take apart the Thunder on a random Friday night because we need a better draft pick anyways, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's how we have to hope it plays out at this point, is just kind of hope that we can go ahead and, draft one of the top 3 big men that are coming out of college. Obviously, if we could land like a Jabari Smith or Chet Holmgren or Banchero from Duke, I mean, that would be ideal. Because the last thing I want to see happen is us, pick 4th overall, where we're in a spot where we have to take Jaden Ivey from Purdue. And our backcourt is already full as is. So does it really make sense for us to go ahead and add another combo guard? I can't see him playing next to Giddey and SGA, honestly.
Yeah, well, what else do you see the Thunder doing here going forward over the next couple seasons?
Well, I have a 5-step plan for you, Calvin.
There you go.
Number 1, let's go, let's cook. Number 1 on my list is I will go ahead and pick up the team options on Lou Dort and Isaiah Roby. Like you said, Roby is he's a warm body off of the bench. I don't know if he's... Man, I really struggle with the small forward position with us, or the 3 and 4, because I'm not completely sold on Baisley. I kind of thought he might be farther along at this point. I know he's like a 10.6 or 7 rebound guy, but I kind of had higher hopes for him, to be honest. I think if we put Roby in the starting lineup and just put a real 4 or a real 5 there with our guards, I kind of feel like Roby can do the same thing as Baisley.
I agree. I'm just not... I have to remind myself that Baisley is 22, or not even 22. And that's the only thing I have to remind myself about him is that he is still super young, but I'm also, he was he was a first round draft pick. So you would expect more out of him at this point in his career already.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't like a top 5 pick or anything. Off the top of my head, I think he went around 20th, maybe 22nd. He was later in the first round, I think. So yeah, I mean, I didn't expect him to be a perennial all-star or anything like that, but we kind of have to look a couple of years ahead and say, boy, is he really part of the future plans or not? As far as I'm concerned, I don't know. I really think Roby can give us the same kind of counting stats and do it for a third of the salary.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, lay it on me here. What's the second step here?
All right, number 2, I am going to either trade or let Mr. Melodone and Mr. Williams walk. They're both on non-guaranteed contracts. I kind of thought Williams would be traded ahead of the deadline, honestly. I know that the Lakers were kind of asking about him, and honestly, I don't think he's part of our future plans either, so I'm a little upset that we didn't get something for him ahead of time, but we could technically go ahead and bring him back on I think $2 million is what we would owe him, and then trade him in the offseason. So that's what I would do with him and Melodone. I just don't think he has a spot right now with all the guards that we have.
Yeah, and one thing that always, I guess, perplexes me or just kind of confuses me is when I look at the Thunder roster, just up and down, go through it. I mean, Lou Dort is an incredible defensive player. Like, his 3-point percentage is shot up incredibly too. But he's listed on like ESPN as a small forward. But he's 6'3". So the other guys around him, like Josh Giddey being 6'8", and Shai Gilgeous being 6'6", it makes sense. Like, Lou Dort being 6'3", it doesn't even matter. And I don't think about it that often because the other guys around him, also sharing the backcourt with him, are, it's incredibly tall to be point guards overall. It's just bizarre to me that, Lou Dort's like out there guarding LeBron James, who's got 5 inches on him, or whatever it may be. And seeing that every night and then going, okay, so how will Lou Dort in the future work out if Shai or Giddey is traded? And I don't think either of those guys will be, especially anytime soon. They definitely seem like, why not invest in the future in both those guys for as long as you absolutely can? But it's just something to note here is that, like, Kenrich Williams is 6'6". What I'm going, man, isn't that guy a 4? But no, I mean, kind of, but not really. He's kind of like the hybrid guard forward type of deal that we see a bunch now too. So, anyways, I don't know what your thoughts are on the whole like height differential that the whole Thunder roster have, because you've got Pokusevski as a center on ESPN.com at 7 feet tall, when I think a lot of people might go, doesn't he hit a lot of threes or take a lot of them and play more shooting guard role? But still.
Yeah, that's kind of the worries I have about if we land like the number 2 or number 3 pick in the draft and we're looking at Holmgren, because I feel the same way about him. 7-footer, super thin. If he goes up against the Embiids and the Goberts and some of the bigger bodied centers, they're going to eat him alive. But yeah, he's got the range out to 3-point range. I feel like he's not going to be a low post threat. Boy, height is so overrated, I feel. I didn't even know, to tell you the truth, I didn't know Dort was only 6'3". I know that he plays a lot of 3 for us. Again, I really think it's just a sum of what our options are. At this point, we kind of have to get the 2 or 3 good players we have out on the court together to see them gel. So again, I think you have to play Giddey, SGA, and Dort no matter what. I don't know that they necessarily complement each other very well. Dort can hit the occasional corner 3, but I wouldn't call him, a great spot-up shooter by any means. And I don't think Giddey is at this point either. So they have a lot of work to do to see how they can go ahead and get these guys to play together. I know it was a big deal when, Coach came out and said, look, Giddey's going to be the primary ball handler. SGA is going to play off of him. This is what we're going to do with the lineup going forward. I'm a little worried, honestly. We could obviously use some more 3-and-D kind of guys. Is Dort a real 3-and-D guy? Maybe. I don't really know. I can tell you that he averages as many turnovers as he does assists on offense, which I don't necessarily love. But besides that, I don't know. Man, we have a lot of questions. Small forward, power forward. I get the NBA's evolved, and you don't really need a true center. We may not need that Steven Adams kind of banger at this point. The league is made up of a lot more Lou Dorts or Tabo Cephalosha's, guys like that we've had in the past. But I don't know. There's a lot of questions moving on.
It really is. The up and down the Thunder roster, I mean, it's a collection of guys who I don't think would be on a lot of other NBA rosters. I mean, in all seriousness, like Lindy Waters, love watching him in the NBA. Love seeing him have a block and ESPN tweet out the video because he went to Oklahoma State. But at the same point, he's not going to get that opportunity if he's playing for the Sacramento Kings, for example. He's just not going to be promoted up to their active roster for whatever reason it might be, whereas the Thunder are willing to take a couple of their chances, but also see some injuries happen and put Lindy up there. I mean, the guy was making 50% from 3 in the G League. You got to see what he can do in the NBA. But with all that being said, there are a lot of things where, okay, this guy's height makes it where, how is Lou Dort not... on one hand, how did Lou Dort go undrafted? Because he's an active NBA player who is, underpaid value-wise, but also has to respect the team that drafted him in the first place and given him the chance, to play as much as he did, especially against James Harden, all the way into Game 7 against the Rockets in the playoffs, like 2 years ago. So there's a lot of stuff where the height, I go, okay, all right, just throw it out the window. I don't even care anymore. It is what it is, whatever. And then there's also some of it where I'm like, okay, well, if Bruce Brown can play center mostly for the Nets on any given night and basically be like a Lou Dort-ish type guy, hit some threes, play some good defense, etc., make some good cuts on offense. But I still go back to, I'd much, much rather have Lou Dort than Bruce Brown. I think that's the consensus. I'm just curious when we get to the 3 to 5 year mark from now, where it's, okay, let's fully put the accelerator pedal all the way to the floor now and see what this team can do, of how much time on the court does Lou Dort operate on. Is he a 6-man coming off the bench? Is he with this Thunder roster as they try to make the Western Conference Finals, for example?
Yeah, I mean, look at guys like Kawhi Leonard, who were kind of in the same situation. Wasn't necessarily an offensive weapon when he got drafted, and he kind of molded his game and, learned a mid-range game. And I feel like Dort can do the same thing. Now, granted, he's not as big as Kawhi is. Kawhi can go ahead and lock up, the 1 through the 4. Dort's a great wing. He's a great defensive stopper. There's value in that. Like I said, if we pick up his option for next year, it's less than $2 million. I mean, is what he does right now worth $2 million to us? Absolutely.
All right, well, I may need to speed you through the rest of the plan here, but are we in step 3?
All right, step 3, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but we have to draft bigs. We can't draft more guards. I love Jaden Ivey. He's just not a good fit for us. So Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, who I have questions about, I'd still rather have him. If we happen to slip back to 5, 6, 7, something like that, Keegan Murray, Jalen Duren are guys that I would much rather have, who kind of fall lower in the prospect rankings than Jaden Ivey. I know they say good teams, don't draft positions, they draft players, but I think I would break from that mantra a little bit, and I would go ahead and just try to load up our front court a little bit.
I got to agree, especially when we're talking about Roby getting starting minutes and trying to see what he looks like, but at the same point, knowing, all right, JRE, like, maybe the future, maybe not, but why not take some more chances with other guys who are in the draft? Especially if Duren is come at, like, the 7th pick, and that's what pick we end up getting, right?
Yeah, and we've got Derek Favors for next year, too. I mean, let's not pretend that he's not going to go ahead and pick up that $10 million option because he's going to. So, if we go ahead and draft a 4, we can put him right next to Derek and hope he can kind of mentor him and, teach him some tips of the trade and, go from there.
Exactly. All right. Well, what about step 4 here? What are you feeling?
All right. 4, I kind of already touched on again, but SGA, Giddy, Dort, man, you got to keep them together. Give them a couple of years to go ahead and gel and figure out how they can play together. Like you said, does Trey Mann end up in the starting lineup as a combo guard? Is Dort on the bench? How do you play these 4 guards in a 3-guard offense? I honestly think they're all talented enough. I'm really impressed with what Trey Mann has done in limited minutes. I would love to see more from him. And I think we have to give those 4 as much run as possible for the next year or 2 anyways.
Totally agree there. I love the fact that Trey Mann is able to get his own shot so effectively. He's able to create so much space against guys. I mean, the ESPN highlight is him creating space with a couple step backs, but granted, all legal moves, because we know James Harden's able to do it, but against Luka Doncic. And that is an incredible ability to have a combo guard, maybe coming off the bench, but maybe it's just kind of whatever night of the week it is, we're going to change it around. Definitely, Dagnall has gone away from the Scott Brooks mentality of, no, Kendrick Perkins is starting every single game, period. We're not getting away from that. And I love that about him as a coach. Granted, it doesn't happen like every night. It's usually about the same guys starting unless they are injured. But I would love to see an interchangeability of these 4 guards coming in and out of the lineup, but just with some more time.
Yeah, and play matchups. I mean, depending on the team that you're playing that night, maybe somebody is a better fit than the guy who usually starts. I feel like that's one of the things with advanced analytics at this point. You can go ahead and kind of mix and match guys like that. Again, I think Giddy can go ahead and play with anybody. He's definitely, a pass-first guy. I think he's shown that he can go ahead and he can go ahead and thrive with the ball, but I think he can play off of the ball a little bit too. Same with SGA. So it doesn't really matter who that 3rd guard is. If it's going to be Dort, if it's going to be Mann, neither one of them really need the ball constantly. You're not going to run the offense through them anyways. So, play with it a little bit. See what works best for the team going forward.
For sure. All right, well, as we're going to wrap up here a little bit, but I got to get to step 5. Got to hear what you're thinking.
All right, step 5, real quick. Let's start spending our draft currency. Okay, let's move up in drafts. Let's kind of move around. Let's not get complacent. We've got possibly, and of course not all of these are going to vest for us, but we could have 3 firsts in 2022, 4 in 2023, 3 in 2024, 4 in 2025, and 3 in 2026, all just first-round picks. There is no reason in this draft, if, say, we fall to 5, that we can't go ahead and just toss a couple of 1s to somebody to move up to 3. Again, I think our need in the front court is much bigger than, not being able to give up a first-round pick in 2026.
I could for sure see something like that where, for example, we end up, seeing like the Lakers this year, and they end up finishing where they're slotted at. They're not too happy with it, but next year they end up bottoming out or something, and they end up getting a much higher draft pick, but they're still like 5th. In this makeup scenario, it's kind of like the Warriors last year, where the Warriors need guys, but they didn't need the draft pick they had last year. And last year would have been, I think, a great chance to try to trade up with a team like the Warriors, for example, if they got a higher draft pick and gone, hey, you know what? Do you really want Wiseman? Like, are you sure? Or would you rather have a couple more first rounders here in future years? Now, the timeline for this is what's going to matter. Like, when do the Thunder actually hit the gas pedal and go, you know what? Like, let's go ahead and spend some of that draft capital just because we have it. We currently have so many draft picks available that we will have to lose players off the team if we're going to actually use the draft capital, which is funny with its own right. But I'm with you. I do think that this Thunder team, it's kind of okay, let's see what Josh Giddey's like in year 2, and then start figuring out the plan, like the real plan. Because this year, for example, I mean, if the Thunder lose a couple more games and either the Pistons or the Rockets or I think the Magic, I'm saying, if I remember that correctly, win a couple more, the Thunder could fall to have even draft odds with the top 3 being the exact same and get a top 3 pick where they're able to pick from a Jabari Smith or a Chet Holmgren or Paulo Banchero. That would fit the team much better than as we've said before, than Jaden Ivey. So it all comes down to fit. All comes down to what it looks like at the end of the year. But I could not agree more. Thunder gotta figure out, okay, when we're going to start spending this draft capital, especially as Sam Presti gets more and more recognition around the league. Like he's only going to get more and more recognition as a Lindy Waters, an Oliver Sarr, an Isaiah Roby, and who else is playing in that game? And a SGA, but also like Pokashevsky ended up beating the 5th best team in the West in the Denver Nuggets. That'll keep making more and more headlines, so the Thunder have to start sitting out players, like truly going, okay, nope, SGA, like you got to rest tonight or whatever. Or didn't your foot injury from last season start being worse? Just because we gotta lose more games to truly like bottom out. And I gotta say, it's funny.
So you think they're going to kind of go with the Al Horford method?
Yeah, I can see it because there's a really, really good way to get a team ready for the future while still losing games. But unfortunately, the Thunder are doing it, are not seeing that plan all the way through just because they're too good. Like, the players play too good of defense, honestly. I mean, Josh Giddey being Rookie of the Month for 4 months in a row before March is insane after we already have SG on the roster and a bunch of other guys who are not all that great. It's like SGA and Josh Giddey, and then I forget how long Lou Dort's been out even. So it's such a weird deal to be able to win as many games as the Thunder do, but also knowing that this team has an over-under win-loss of 25, right? And just knowing, okay, this team is set up right now to lose games. They're just not losing because you've got a lot of these guys who are wanting to win games because they also want to be in the league. I mean, Vit Krejcik, however you say his last name, sorry, I know I butchered it, he wants to stay in the league. So he's trying to put up points and put up minutes. But none of these guys are really playing a bunch of hero ball either. They're just playing a bunch of really good team basketball because they want to stay in the league, but, they know they need to lose too. It's weird.
Well, like you said, I think a lot of these guys are just happy to be where they're at right now. Because if we look at the roster, honestly, we could probably say 2/3, 75% of these guys should be with the Bloom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, we just don't have any depth, really. Like I said, Tre Mann has blown my mind this year. I'm so happy that we have a young player who has gotten a chance and has really taken the ball and run with it. Super excited about him. And like I said, the backcourt in general. But would I trade one of them and a first or a future first, next year first, and a player for Pascal Siakam or somebody like that, a 4 who can come in and really give us what we're lacking? I mean, I would do that trade in a heartbeat.
I could not agree more. I mean, there's also the big deal that any other Thunder fan I've talked to about any idea going forward, it basically does come back to the 5-step plan that you laid out. Of, okay, let's see what we got. Let's keep working with what we got, but let's also speed up the timeline a little bit, just because I don't think anyone in the whole entire Thunder front office is saying, well, we're not going to win anything for 5 years. But it does feel a little bit like that. And granted, this team was in the playoffs 2 years ago. It just is weird to think about that when I've seen how much roster turnover there's been too. I think it's just SGA and Lou Dort are left from that playoff team. And that's great because on one hand, you've got a bunch of young guys who are getting their chance to play, but on the other hand, the organization is 26 out of 30 teams in the league as far as attendance goes. Granted, I think that's about average for this small of a market team that is not winning games, but still, it's being from Oklahoma City and, in '08 basically seeing the team not do great, but then ever since then, I mean, there's one bad Thunder year, and then every single year was incredibly the best ever, and every Seattle Sonics fan is pissed about it. I don't blame them. So now it's kind of resetting expectations for this team going forward,
Yeah,
and a bunch of other fans wanting to know what's going on.
Yeah, the thing I noticed with the way that we're doing this rebuild is it kind of reminds me of the differences between rebuilding in Major League Baseball and rebuilding in the NBA. Where in the NBA, if you have a top 3 pick, I mean, they're going to go ahead and hopefully add 10 wins to your team the following year just by themselves. Unless you happen to bust on somebody like an Anthony Bennett or a Darko Milicic or some of these like famous busts. But for the most part, if you get a top 3 pick, you're going to see them next year on your team, and they're going to go ahead and make, positive steps for you. Where in baseball, look at like the Houston Astros. They had to completely bottom out. And they had to go ahead and draft for years and years. And they didn't add free agents. They were just going to go ahead and get young and get good and stuff. And it took a while. And that's the only beef I have with Presti right now is I feel like we're kind of rebuilding that way as opposed to, hey, let's get a couple of guys who we know can go ahead and play like SGA. Again, I think we've seen it with Giddey. But let's supplement that a little bit. Do we really need to have, 16, 17 number 1 picks in the next 5 years? No, it's asinine. There's no reason to go ahead and draft that many first rounders. Or are we going to go ahead and push it off so that we have more first rounders in 2034 or 2035? Like, no, we don't need that. I feel like our window, I get that we're a couple of years away from maybe even sniffing the playoffs, but man, it would just be so exciting to bring in, unfortunately we traded him away, but a player like Sabonis, for example, just a 4 like that, who can just, be another face of the franchise, kind of pair him up with SGA. I would love that. I think that's what we need to do kind of going forward. Yeah, I do hope that we happen to get like the number 1 pick the next couple of seasons and we just hit home runs on all-stars and build up that way. But at some point, you kind of have to add layers to it. We can't keep drafting, Puko and guys like that who aren't really going to give us what we need. They're not going to energize the fan base. They're not going to put butts in seats. They're not going to give us extra wins. So I really hope Presti just sits back and goes, okay, I think we've got 2 or 3, top 6 guys here. We've got, 2 starters and a 6th man. Let's go ahead and start adding to the front court. And I don't see why in a year or 2 we can't, kind of sniff play-in games for the playoffs.
Yeah, that's one of the things that has to be annoying as a Thunder fan is as you see the future draft picks come in. It's like, well, but why? But why are we thinking in 2028 we still will want first rounders? Everyone wants first round draft picks if they're there, but they're becoming devalued almost because the Thunder just have so many. And I do really, really think that the more time that is spent on building towards the future, the worse the present becomes for this team. It just goes in one of those things like you're saying. If Sabonis was available for 2 first rounders for this season, or let's say a first rounder this season, a first rounder next season, and the Thunder didn't jump on that chance, I don't know. That would frustrate me as a player. Like if SGA is able to figure that out. And also, at some point, Josh Giddey will have to be paid, a big deal contract. It's not tomorrow. It's not next year. It's not even the year after, I don't think. But towards the end of his 3rd year on the team, we're seeing like Zion Williamson is, not really around the Pelicans, but the Pelicans are going to offer him $1 a max contract, right? Like, why they have to. They have to try to see how he plays with the team. I think we'll be in a situation where it's, okay, we have to offer Josh Giddey a max contract, but all of a sudden that's 2 max contracts on the roster. How many do you want to be when we're still maybe sniffing the play-in tournament? So just something to think about as we move forward as Thunder fans here for later seasons.
Yeah, and speaking of Zion, would you make that move? You know, if you were Presti, you see that his stock is down right now. They're not going to sell him for peanuts or anything. But again, with all the picks we have, what if we offer them, you know, a late first this upcoming draft, and then our better of our first round picks for next year? And I don't know if they need a young player or something, we can go ahead and give them a Dort or a Man or something like that. I still, with Zion being Zion this year, I would still do that deal in a heartbeat because, again, if it happens to go well for us, there's another 4 type player and he balances our roster better, and we've seen what he can do. Unfortunately, he's not doing it this year, but we've kind of seen Zion be Zion, and I would love to have that.
Would love to have it as well, especially if it's something where if it's not SGA and it's not Giddey, go get Zion. I almost don't care what the rest of it is. You'd always take the proven guy over the unproven guy. And if there is we're able to go get Zion, but for example, it's dealing our own draft pick this year. Well, I'd say do it today because you don't know if our draft pick this year is going to be the 3rd, 1st, or the 8th pick. And there's a chance it could be the 5th and it could be locked in, or it's no worse than the 5th. But still, we've seen Zion play NBA games. Granted, not a lot of them, not over 80 in his first 3 seasons, but you know, it's just one of those things where I would much rather have that type of guy with the Thunder and in the Thunder organization as opposed to the Pelicans organization, see how it works out. Because Carmelo Anthony is out there saying how good the Thunder treated him. You've got Westbrook saying the same thing. You have KD not really saying anything bad about the Thunder at all anymore. In fact, he said some nicer things recently. It's just, you haven't really heard that many great things about the Pelicans in a while, especially their medical staff, especially their training staff. I think they're doing a lot of good things. At the same point, change of scenery could be everything for a guy like that. It could be everything for a guy like Sabonis. It could be everything for a guy, like Tyrese Halliburton. Was traded away from the Kings in that Sabonis trade. It's just, okay, a lot of guys seem to play extremely well with the Thunder. How can we bring that value into the organization and truly try to get it going? So,
yeah.
I don't know. It's got my long-winded rant. What are we going to do as Thunder fans going forward? Am I going to ask the 15-year-old brother, hey, what jersey do you want to get? And he says, actually, I'd really like a Cade Cunningham jersey because Cade Cunningham went to Oklahoma State. I used to work for the Pistons myself, so he's got the tie in there as well. But I was weirded out that he didn't say, oh, Josh Giddey or SGA or whatever. So, it's one of those things.
It is, and it's one of those things where Josh Giddey jerseys aren't even widely available right now. Mm-hmm. So, do I want to wear SGA? I'll tell you honestly, I haven't bought a Thunder jersey since, I had a Westbrook, I had a Serge Ibaka, and I don't think I've bought one since then, to be honest.
Yeah, I have a Chris Paul Thunder jersey. That was a gift, and that was after he got traded because it was like $17. It was a great gift, but again, it was from the same little brother, actually. And it's orange, so go Pokes. But I don't know the last Thunder jersey I have. I have an SGA shirt jersey, but that's different. That's $30. That's not a huge investment. So, anyways, with you there as well. Well, Nick, thanks so much for joining me here. Latest episode of the CGA Tour. Where can everyone find more information about you and kind of follow your podcast here as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's a blast. I'm a big fan of the show, so I'm happy to do this. People can find The Toe Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to music or listen to podcasts. We do a full-length podcast once a week, and then we do a couple of abbreviated bonus shows Wednesdays and Fridays. So just look out for that. Obviously, Twitter, Facebook, yada yada.
All right, the TOSHO, right? If you're looking for him. All right, well, Nick, thanks so much again for joining, and we'll catch you guys again here shortly.